Hey, David Brewster here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Headbangers Ball. And of course, Headbangers Ball was a very popular show on MTV back in the day. And my sister and I actually used to tune in, every weekend, and we would watch Headbangers Ball. Saturday nights, we'd stay up late, we'd record it. We were, obsessed with that show. And I was a kid, and so was she. And we just loved the program. It was random, the music, the videos, the hosts, all the different things that would occur. There was nothing else like that on TV, period. I mean, there was Night Flight and some other shows, on other channels. But Headbangers Ball was the only show that was like that. It was for metalheads and rock fans. They played videos, by bands that they normally did not play, during the day. And, so this episode's kind of a tribute to that, very popular and famous show. Kind of gives me an excuse to play, some riffs and show some things, kind of in a different light. It's not centered around one band. And I've kind of created this episode to kind of mimic a typical episode of Headbangers Ball because it's going to be very random. One thing about the show, as I got a little bit older and I became a little bit more, skilled or equipped, playing guitar, one thing that I like to do, because my sister and I would record, the episodes of Headbangers Ball, and we would watch them. I mean, we watched those tapes for years. If there was nothing on TV, we would just pop in some random, VHS, mix of Headbangers Ball, and we'd sit there and watch that for hours, and if we still couldn't find anything on TV, we would rewind the tape and watch it again, and we loved it. But one thing I slowly noticed I started to do is I wouldn't plug my guitar in, but I would just sit there in front of the TV with my guitar, and I would watch the show, and then as the music and the videos started to play, I would try to learn as much as I could, and I wouldn't rewind or pause or anything like that. I wasn't trying to learn, complete songs, like that. I knew I was working on ear training, and I was really trying to get better at hearing music and learning, kind of how to figure it out and how to play it. And, I didn't really have anybody telling me to do that. I just kind of started doing it, and I just instinctively knew. I was like, this has to be good for my ear, because I'm sitting here forcing myself, to try to learn as much as I can. So depending on the artist and depending on the song or whatever, maybe I only figured out the key. Like maybe it was like, oh, it's in E, and then the rest of the song blew by. And I normally didn't worry about the solos because, even though I really wanted to play the solos, I didn't really have very much lead ability. So maybe I could figure out like part of a lick or a fill or something, and then catch a few riffs and a few chords and chord progressions. But I was trying to cram as much into those, little practice sessions as I could. The opening riff, that was Balls to the Wall by Accept. And I know the first time I ever heard that song, that riff came on, and it just stopped me in my tracks, and I listened to it, and it was like, okay, pay attention, because the song has balls itself. When you hear it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a big bull, strutting around. It's like, oh my gosh, it's heavy, aggressive, and it's simple, but it kicks you right in the face, And we're using like those little partial chords. It's based around E or E minor, but he's using like a partial G. And even that, that E, the partial E power chord to a partial D back to E. When I heard that, I heard it dip down lower than E. And, just by kind of hearing it, being played, I kind of figured that out, where it was like, oh, he's doing that. With that riff, make sure you do everything with downstrokes, so it has that crushing, kind of heavy push to it. You really don't want to play around with alternate picking or alternate strokes or alternate strums, because you're going to lose that hit and that intensity too. So downstrokes are where it's at. Really cool. And with those kind of riffs where we're just taking a partial chord and we're kind of moving around, that kind of, rhythm playing has been around for decades and decades and decades in rock, hard rock, and metal. And you can find examples of this everywhere. You can go all the way back to Smoke on the Water. Or maybe Cold Gin by Kiss. You can find a lot of examples of this. Look at 2 Minutes to Midnight by Iron Maiden. And we're just taking partial chords. It's almost like Balls to the Wall, it's just a little different. It's an A for one thing. And I love the fact that they're kind of using a little bit of vibrato on that dyad or that double stop. Just to kind of give it a little bit of movement, and you can kind of hear it move, in that riff, which is cool. And you're literally just kind of flirting with C over A, D over A, C over A, and then eventually, an A power chord. Sounds like ZZ Top if you play it with your fingers like that. It kind of changes, the intensity. For another example of that kind of thing, this is from the song Everyone's a Star from the band TNT, which definitely, Headbangers Ball would play, videos from groups like TNT, which these days, there aren't really very many people that remember TNT. I do, and I've actually had a few requests for Ronnie Latrecro, and Ronnie's an amazing guitar player, and, if you like 80s rock and hard rock and kind of guitar rock, check out TNT. The singer sings, so high that, only dogs can hear it. And then Ronnie Latrecro, is a phenomenal guitarist, a shredder extraordinaire. And he kind of inputs, like classical themes and elements into his, rock and shred guitar playing. Really cool guitarist. But with Everyone's a Star, here, like he's kind of bending, those dyads or double stop. Which is really different to hear, those notes kind of move like that, almost like 2 Minutes to Midnight. It's really different to hear somebody bend, those double stops and kind of smear those notes together like that. Really cool. Yet another example of this kind of moving dyad, rhythm, something like, Somebody Save Me from Cinderella, which definitely, they played this on Headbangers Ball a lot. Again, we're just kind of playing an A power chord, just kind of an F5 over A, and then it's kind of a D5 over A. And then he starts doing this kind of bluesy, double stop slide. But you put all that together and you've got Somebody Save Me. Classic riff. Cool song too. So I can't very well make a chord play based around Headbangers Ball without talking about SOD and the Milano Mosh. And the Milano Mosh actually was like the early theme, like kind of between the commercial breaks and stuff like that for Headbangers Ball. And the riff itself, is kind of simple, but SOD actually, features Scott Ian and Charlie, from Anthrax. And it was kind of an Anthrax side project as a joke. They just started recording these brutal, crazy, short little, 2 and 3 minute long songs. And it found an audience. People actually started buying that album, Stormtroopers of Death. What was it, Speak English or Die, or whatever it was called, which is not PC these days. But back then, it was kind of like the Andrew Dice Clay, I guess, of metal. But it was offensive and rude and crude and fast and aggressive and popular. It became so popular that Anthrax, they actually had to decide, are we going to continue as Anthrax, or are we going to start doing this, Stormtroopers of Death thing, or SOD? And of course they decided to, continue with Anthrax. But Milano Mosh, actually, the main riff, it's really simple. It's just a G power chord to F sharp power chord to C, and they're just kind of chugging that over and over. Something like that. Now, speaking of metal and Headbangers Ball, I totally remember watching, music videos, and there would be just this random assortment of all these different groups. And I distinctly remember watching, King Diamond's Welcome Home, video, and when I saw it, that's the one where the kid pushes grandma down the stairs and all that stuff. And when I saw that, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I should be watching this. This is crazy. And of course I was a kid too, but Welcome Home, that has a, kind of a cool mix and match between power chords and some single notes too. And I love riffs like this where you've got you can kind of see there it moves between A and B. So we're doing this A power chord, where it's more just an open A string, really. And then you're doing this kind of hammer-on pull-off maneuver. Something like that. And then C, B to G. Second time through, he's going to move to that G and then kind of pedal between G and C. So something like this. And then it moves to B, and you're going to basically do the exact same thing, but a whole step higher. Now, another classic riff that's definitely, hard-hitting, and you would find this group played on Headbangers Ball all the time, but the song Big City Nights by Scorpions. And of course, Scorpions, their biggest song, obviously, is Rock You Like a Hurricane, and that has a great riff in it, too. But I always like Big City Nights, I think, a little bit better. It was played a little bit less, it didn't kind of have that overkill that Rock You Like a Hurricane had. See there, we're doing an A power chord, and then he actually reaches up and grabs, the sharp 5. That would technically be an E sharp. You could also think that as an F too, but that's definitely kind of flirting with augmented, a raised 5th. And then all the way up to F to D, F to E to D power chords. Go down to C, and then you're going to basically grab this G5 and then grab the 6th right there. And then he's going to move all the way up here, and you're basically playing the top part of a G sus4, and then G major. It's actually, part of a G major chord. And he's doing the sus4 right there. example is actually another video they used to play endlessly on Headbangers Ball. And MTV actually played this video a lot, like even when it wasn't, you know, time for Headbangers Ball. But that's the song 18 in Life, and there's some interesting, you know, things happening with the chords here. So there's a C sharp minor in the beginning that they're kind of picking through, but then the fretted part of that lifts off, and then you're just basically left with the bar. And that would be a B over C sharp, because you're playing the top part of a B major chord, but you're basically using C sharp as the root. You know, something like that. And then you're going to move down to an A sus2, and then a B sus4, which conveniently, the sus4, you know, the sus4 note is that high E string open there. You know, there's kind of more the Van Halen, you know, method of sus4 chords, and then there's the Skid Row kind of alteration, which is really cool. Classic guitar part too, and a really cool song. Alright, that's gonna wrap this look at the chords of Headbangers Ball. And of course, you know, there were so many videos, and the show, you know, extended on into the 90s. I don't think it actually left MTV until like 1995. So they started adding, you know, you'd see like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and some groups like that. Tool, of course, you know, showed up. White Zombie and some of those groups, Pantera, 90s Megadeth, 90s Metallica. You know, that was kind of more the early to mid 90s Headbangers Ball. But this episode obviously is hitting that late 80s Adam Curry, you know, era. And I could hit other eras too. I mean, I could probably do a dozen, you know, Headbangers Ball episodes and just kind of break down, you know, some of these songs and riffs. But anyway, leave some feedback and some comments, and please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more material and lessons. Thank you.